Okay, welcome everybody to the Town of Walpole Select Board meeting. It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, and since the hour is past 7 p.m., we will begin our meeting as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'll remind everyone that we are still operating under the emergency declaration of the governor issued on March 12th, 2020. Which authorized remote participation for all public boards due to said emergency declaration order. And every vote will be taken by roll call vote. So we'll kick off with our first item under appointments today, which is our quarterly report from the Walpole Chief of Police, Chief Carmichael. Chief, welcome. Bittersweet quarterly report this time, but
yeah, good evening, everybody. How you doing? Thanks for having us tonight. So jumping into our quarterly report under personnel. As you know, we've hired several people over the last few months who are all doing an excellent job. Dispatcher John Holmes, who came over from Dover, he was also working as a special in Foxborough. He's doing a great job at dispatch. Officer Kelsey Kelly, Officer Billy Mitchell, and Officer Liam O'Donnell. They're all in different phases of FTO since they've gotten out of the academy, and all of them are doing exceptionally well. They're fitting in really, really great, and it's great seeing them out there doing all their community policing outreach and stuff, which is, we've done a few coffee with cops recently, and each of them have been out for different ones, and it's been really good to see them out there. I did send the board some stuff on our award ceremony. Because of COVID last year, we ended up doing two different ones. One we did over the summer and one we did for the second 6 months of the year. And so we did have a ceremony here at the station last week, and we recognized, I'll just quickly run through them as to who we recognized. Medal of Valor and Life Saving Award, and medal went to Officer Crown, Officer Lagoa, and Officer Doherty. That was for their efforts during a house fire where they removed an individual from the home that was unable to get out of the house on his own. And they did a great job at that call. Another Lifesaver Award went to Officer Thayan Moriarty, who assisted a gentleman who was suffering from a heart attack. They performed CPR and were able to help him regain consciousness, and they were able to revive him. Officer Doherty was also given the Lifesaver Award for and I'm sure the board remembers this one, back during the beginning of COVID when there was a motor vehicle crash involving an individual from Walpole, and that crash was a result of a heart attack. And Officer Doherty and an off-duty nurse, Kathy Vachon, who lives right here near the station, and as well as some of the neighbors immediately went to the victim's aid. They had to smash the windows out in order to gain access to the car, get him out onto the street and perform CPR for him. And it was a lot of great action that went into this one. And people such as Kathy, who was an off-duty nurse, you know, she without hesitation jumped right in there, started doing CPR. Officer Doherty assisted with the AED. And they were able to revive that person as well. So that was just a great job. And it was during a time when, you know, COVID was just starting. And so there was that, you know, that little hesitation of, you know, the virus and everything. But without hesitation, they just jumped right into action to save somebody's life. So that was a great job by Officer Doherty and Nurse Vachon. Distinguished service went to Officer Detective Bethany and Detective Sergeant Tolan for the stabbing incident that occurred in Walpole Center over the fall, and we were notified from a hospital, and that the victim in that case was not expected to survive. So they worked literally over 24 to 36 hours straight, working that case, executing a couple of search warrants, and made arrests within 48 hours. They had an arrest and recovered significant evidence and everything. So that was a great job by them. Distinguished service to Detective Kevlich, who's done a great job with our drug investigations. And I'll just mention right now, as part of the quarterly report, Detective Kevlich has made significant drug distribution trafficking arrests just over this last, between the summer and now, with third tier trafficking weight, which is an 8-year minimum mandatory. Of these drug dealers that are coming from other areas and coming into Walpole and distributing the poison out on our streets. And Detective Kevlich continues to do that. He just made another couple of arrests of drug dealers that were coming up from Rhode Island and distributing fentanyl in our community, which have actually been linked to our overdoses. So that whole issue there with, the Walpole Police Department still continues to focus on assisting people suffering from substance use disorder and getting them the resources and treatment and recovery that they need. On the other end, the enforcement side, we're relentlessly targeting drug dealers that are going to bring this stuff into the town. And I know that's going to continue in the future. Distinguished Service Award went to Sergeant Becker, Officer Manganello, Officer Powers, and Officer Koenig at a significant disturbance call where the victim had to jump out of a second-story window. And officers had to make a dynamic entry as the person had taken somebody, a young child, and barricaded themselves inside of the home. This is another situation that, we see situations that occur across the country, and our officers just amazingly, they made a dynamic entry into this home based on exigent circumstances. They locate this person. There's a struggle that ensues, and their restraint and how they handle these situations is just tremendous. And they were able to bring this person into custody basically without much problem at all. And that's there's so much that goes to that as far as our officers and how well they're trained and how well they're equipped to deal with some of the situations that we're seeing. Meritorious Service Award went to Dispatcher Barnett, Jenna Barnett, who was involved in our first EpiPen incident. As you know, we recently started carrying EpiPens to assist people with anaphylactic shock and suffering from allergy reactions. And a man called 911, and his child was suffering from an allergic reaction. And Jenna had already just been trained in the administration of the EpiPen and was able to talk him through it when he was very upset and distraught on the phone, and it really helped save that little child's life. So she was recognized. And last but not least, the Civilian Service Award we gave to our administrative assistant, Judy Ryan Decker, who is really the chief here. She's the one that takes care of everything here, and she's just done a tremendous job, and her institutional knowledge is just invaluable. And so we wanted to recognize Judy. And so that was it for the awards this past 6 months. And as always, we appreciate the officers going above and beyond in their efforts, what they're doing out there. Some quick things to mention, as we know that we've been talking about this stuff a lot over the last year, but our strategic plan continues to be a significant document for us. And thank you to the board and to Jim and Finance Committee, town meeting, everybody that's been standing behind the things that we've identified that we really need for the department. And we're very lucky and fortunate to have that support. And so we just want to recognize that plan is, we're chipping away at a lot of things in there, and it's really helping out. Some of the other, I know last time we talked about a lot of the justice reform, the police reform, and we've gone over that pretty much a lot. But a couple other things came up recently in this last quarter, and that was Brady Giglio and long hearings. Brady Giglio is what's happening is, and Massachusetts hasn't done a good job of this in the past, but any officer that's had issues with untruthfulness whether it be an internal investigation, or maybe they weren't truthful on the stand when they were testifying, or it could have just been a situation at any point in their career when there was an issue with truthfulness, and it was actually supported, and that they were untruthful, and that plays into how their testimony comes out in court. And so the district attorneys in Massachusetts have started to really pay attention to that, and we had to go back into our as part of compliance, go back in and look at all of our personnel files and go back in history of every officer that's on the department, and determine whether or not there's issues that could be relative to that. And the great news is that we didn't have any issues. And we went back through our personnel files, and we looked at things, and then we got in touch with the district attorney, District Attorney Morrissey, and I had some conversations with some of the stuff that played into it. And our officers are all pretty much clear of that. If anything comes up in the future, that would obviously have to be transferred over and conferred with the district attorney's office. And on the long hearings, that's new case law with the Supreme Judicial Court. They made decisions on this case called Long. And what the Long case does is basically it involves bias-based policing. And anytime that a police officer is inferred to have committed any type of bias, racial bias, as a result of a motor vehicle stop, that information could be used by the defense as a way to dispel the officer's motive for the stop. And all they have to do is make an inference that this is based on racial profiling. And so we've put a system into place here within the department. Lieutenant Zangetti, who's very good at he's very tech savvy, he's very good with pulling up the important data that we need. And this data is now being tracked in the department, so that when we do already have long hearings scheduled, we have some coming up. So when the officer goes and testifies, basically what the district attorney has to show is that there is no bias. And so the way you do that is showing their history of motor vehicle stops and the breakdown of people that were stopped, and the race of those people, and it's all based on their own data that's been entered as a result of their motor vehicle stops. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with long hearings, but we can already tell the board right now that we have no issues. We have the data to support what the officers are doing out there as far as motor vehicle stops, and if any long hearings come up, we can certainly show that data through their motor vehicle stops and their citation history, that what they're doing is based only on behavior of driving behavior and that sort of thing. Drug overdoses, unfortunately, 2020 was a significant year for Massachusetts. Overdose deaths are actually up. Here in Walpole, we're still staying steady. I wouldn't say we have an increase or decrease at this point, but we have had 12 overdoses since the beginning of the year, and we have had 3 fatalities. And so we continue to try and engage the community, try and provide outreach, try and assist with our resource kits and getting people into treatment and recovery. That obviously being a big issue. And then mental health, as always, continues to continue along the same trend as what we've been seeing. And I think we all know that the COVID and the pandemic issue hitting us certainly had an impact on people and how they are coping with everything that's happened over the last year with the pandemic. And a lot of people struggled. They certainly have struggled from it, and we're continuing to see that in our data. At this point, as you know, last year we've pulled data out of our incidents, and we identified 611 incidents that were associated with some form of mental illness, mental health crisis. And so far this year, we're not even to the end of June, and we're at 314. So we're again on line to exceed where we were last year as well as the years prior. And the one good thing is I know I sent the board our data on mental health calls, and we kind of broke that down in the data. And what Lieutenant White is doing a great job of tracking this data for us. And if you look at that data, one of the things we added in there were officers who are CIT trained. So officers who are trained in crisis intervention training. As you know, we've made that pledge to train the entire department in crisis intervention training, de-escalation, and mental health first aid. And Lieutenant Kilroy, who's our training officer, has done a magnificent job of getting everybody up to training. We're almost there. We're gonna have the entire Walpole Police Department trained in CIT probably this year, and that's been quite a feat. I don't think many police departments can say that around here. But we do break it down as how many times we've used force at mental health calls, how many times resulted in criminal activity or criminal charges, how many were protective custody or protective custody for drugs. So we break it all down. If the board has any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. And then ALICE training, as you know, we've done a lot of work with our schools on our all hazards plan, and our all hazards plan is pretty much ALICE: alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate. We use those terms holistically through the entire town. We have trained all of the staff, all of the students, all of the administration in ALICE. We have multiple officers that are trained in it, especially Officer Hart, Sergeant O'Connor, Officer Crown. They've done a great job of getting back in our schools, teaching all the new teachers coming in, and teaching all the new kids that transfer or transition up to other schools. So if you're going from Byrd to the high school or OPR to Byrd, there's a little bit different protocol. So we're making sure that we train those grades as they come up. And we're at the point now where our entire school district is trained in the same protocol with the same terminology and the same processes, and that's where we need it to be. And then you work in the other stuff like the go bags that we have in all the classrooms and the interoperability between the schools and the police. We have a good system down now, and so that was a huge, colossal undertaking, and we continue to work on that. And so one of really the last thing, we had a couple other critical incidents that happened over this last term. One of them was, and I just want to mention this because, again, the officers just did a tremendous job. We got a call to go to the Newton Wellesley Physicians Family Center on Norfolk Street, and there was a threat with a firearm where a man had made a threat to an employee there, and basically that he was threatening to come there and to use the firearm at that location. And we were quickly able to establish video from the home where he was leaving from, and he did it. It was indeed appeared to be loading weapons into his vehicle, and then was on the run. Like he was gone. He was mobile somewhere. And so we started. We got down there. We set up an inner perimeter. We set up an outer perimeter. He wasn't going to be able to get in there, and we immediately evacuated the building. The employees and the people that were there for healthcare and other reasons did a tremendous job of evacuating, getting in their vehicles, getting the victim and people involved to safe places, and everybody just did a tremendous job. And ultimately, it turned out that it worked out well because communication was made with that individual here, and he ended up turning himself in. So again, just another critical situation that resulted in the best way possible. So, one other thing. So as the board knows, we've done a lot of reform dealing with the reform issues: justice, equity, accountability, and law enforcement. And one of the other things that we saw that was important to build into our data tracking was we track use of force incidents. So anytime a police officer uses force on somebody during an arrest or a PC or even a mental health situation, those are tracked by incident, by force used, and then they're reviewed, and that we're made sure that they are done the right way. And we're very transparent about it. I know I sent the board all of our use of force data right at the end of the year for 2020. But now what we're tracking is de-escalation. So anytime a police officer involved in a use of force situation where force could be used, we're tracking the times when they actually de-escalate that situation and they peacefully deal with that situation without using force. And why that's going to be important going forward is because Post, who is going to be overseeing police departments in Massachusetts, they want to know when police officers use force and they use excessive force. And we also want to be able to show them all of the times that officers de-escalated force. And that, because that's an important balance to show that a police officer used two use of force twice last year. It's good to know that they use, 18 times, 20 times they de-escalated. And so that's why we've, Lieutenant Zangetti has now built something in there that we can track that. And so that's about it. I know, sorry, long-winded there, but that's pretty much all we have. And so if I could, just one other thing, I know everybody knows that I'll be moving on in a few days here, and I just want to thank the board for all of your support and all of your support of me and especially of this police department, the men and women of the department that need it, especially in a time when we had a tough year, the COVID, the pandemic, and a lot of the scrutiny that policing faced last year, and with the reform coming along, it was a tough year. I mean, I'll be honest, it was a challenging time for us, and I'm just so proud of how the officers have worked through it and got to where we are today. And my trust in Deputy Chief Kelleher and helping me work through this pandemic and the scrutiny of the police, and then the demands of police reform coming in. And we had to work very fast to deal with our policy modifications and training on those policies, and then ensuring that we're in compliance with Post and the federal law. And it was a lot. And so, I know as I transition out, I know Deputy Chief Kelleher will do a great job stepping up, and he's earned the respect and the mutual trust of the officers here, and he has very good command presence, and certainly understands our mission, our vision, our values, which we really do embrace. We really do try and put that into play. That is our compass, and I know that he embraces the community policing philosophy and 21st century policing. So we've dealt with a lot of stuff over the last year with the reform and the strategic plan, all the stuff. He's been right there. He's been right by my side, and I feel good knowing that my town and this department that I hope I left some type of a legacy with is gonna thrive going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. We'll just go around to the board here with any further questions or comments. David Salvatore, start with you, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think COVID has certainly created some challenges, and I think the emancipation from COVID is also going to create some challenges in this next year. So I'm sure the department is going to see some craziness this summer, and I think you have left the legacy. I've heard police officers saying I should have been a firefighter. It's clear to me that John Carmichael, you should have always been a police officer. You epitomize what good policing should be, and I wish you well in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Mark Gallivan, please.
Yeah, Chief, I wish you well over in Newton. I wish you were going to stay here. I think you've done a great job with the Walpole Police Department, and you've left a strong department as you move on. And I have a lot of respect for Deputy Chief Kelleher, as well as all the officers of the department. And I think they're working hard, and trying to do a good job every day under difficult circumstances. So I just say to the whole department, keep up the good work, and good luck to you, John.
Thank you.
Nancy McKenzie, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think it's great that you guys are going to start keeping track of that de-escalation. I think that will be very important going forward in cases and things like that. I did want to comment, my mom worked for years over at Newton Wellesley, and the staff raved about the Walpole Police Department and how they handled it, and to the point that, you know, they called the retired nurse to let her know. So it was very good. And then, you know, in getting ready for post is a good idea. You know, post is going to be awesome. It's really going to help police reform, and it's going to be a good thing. I think you guys are looking at it in the right way, and you know, I think it's going to work out well for everybody. Post is going to help the entire everything out. Then I did want to mention, I know in the past you guys with ODs did follow up after the fact. You would, you know, you had those little, I forget what you called them, the little things that you went out to give to people afterwards to kind of follow up for treatment. That coming out of COVID, especially the mental health stuff, that, you know, I know that we had mentioned that we partnered with somebody for like mental health and stuff like that. But maybe we could start doing some sort of post follow up with that too, to kind of help the families out and stuff, because, you know, post-COVID recovery of mental health is probably going to be a long road for a lot of people. And
Yeah,
you know, that's it. Thanks.
yeah, no, I agree. It's yeah, we do our resource kits still with overdoses, and not just after an overdose, but if we know of a family, sometimes a family will reach out. They don't really know how to handle a situation. They have a loved one that has a substance use disorder, and we'll help them in those cases, Section 35, or we'll do we'll help them with the resource kits. We still have a good partnership with Gatehouse up in New Hampshire that we've helped use and get people from Walpole into treatment up there, and that always works out really well because they're not around the element that they might be around with when they're down here, and it's not so far away that they don't still have contact with family, but it's far enough away that they're not around the element, and they can kind of concentrate on their treatment and recovery, and that to me is that works very well. And they also offer us people that can help detox and that kind of thing. So Turning Point right down in Walpole Center is a great resource for families here in Walpole. Corey and Gerard and all those people down there are great if people ever want to reach out to them. On the mental health stuff, our community crisis intervention team is still very functioning. It was tough during COVID, but they are still trying to have meetings, and we do partner up with the Department of Mental Health, with NAMI, with Riverside, who's one of our closest partners probably, as well as like the clinicians at the high school and Longview, and so there's and parents. So there's some parents that are involved in it that come out, and you know, we'll look at case studies and different things that happened over the past like quarter, and we get that professional input from clinicians and that kind of thing. So it works out very well. But yep, certainly after COVID and post-COVID, we're going to have to stay on top of that.
Thank you. And Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Chief, great report again tonight, as always. One of the things that's been a hallmark of your administration here has been these updates that you provide us. And they're always very thorough, they're very detailed, they involve a lot of data. You know, you've got a data-driven department there, which I think is really, really cool. So I've always really appreciated these updates, and tonight was no difference. I would echo what Nancy said about capturing the de-escalation data. I think that's a really smart move, and we'll see how that tracks over time. So that's really good. I just wanted to say we have been very fortunate to have you as our chief here in Walpole, John Carmichael. You've been a true professional, And I believe that the condition that you're leaving this department in is superb. We're in a great spot. I know you've been working hard to put the bows on the boxes and make sure everything's all buttoned down. And that's really, really important because, you know, we need to have a good, clean stepping off spot. So you've done that and done that well. But as I said, you're a real professional. You're a great advocate for community policing. I've always loved the way that you engage the community in so many different ways. And, you know, it's been, I think it's reflected in the force, in the, you know, in the department and the culture you've put in place. So thanks for everything you've done for us. Thanks for protecting us. And I want to wish you the best as you go off to Newton. And I hope we'll see you around town. I know you're still going to be around here, so we'll see you around town. But best of luck and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, well put, Jim. Well put. Any further questions or comments from the board for Chief Carmichael?
And I have something quick to say, and usually I don't jump in on these, but I just feel kind of compelled to say how great it's been to work with John. I don't want this to sound like a love fest, but it's been really great. I'm sad to see him go. He knows how I feel about him, and I think he's done a good job managing the department and transitioning the police department from the old building over to the new building. And it's just, he has a great command staff in place, and thank him for his years of service to the town of Walpole.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Well said. All right, and thank you, Chief Carmichael. Have a good evening.
You too.
Deputy Chief Kellyanne, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, moving on to our second order of business here under appointments is the, I see, the constable interview and vote for appointment for Kellyanne Murphy. And
So Ben, Kelly's the cell phone on here that we see.
oh, I see
Yeah.
the phone. Okay, all right, very good. So Jim, maybe you could give us a little bit of background here on the constable position and what we're looking for here.
Sure. We've had one constable vacancy for some time, and Kelly heard of it, and she's worked with the chief and the deputy to go through the screening process. We've kind of headed this thing with the town charter. As you may recall, section 3.24A of the town charter specifically lists what's required of the constables here. We've received no other applications during the 30-day period. This would be for a renewable 3-year term. And as you probably know, constables will serve items like eviction notices. They'll work with the police department when necessary to serve formal notices from the courts. She's been vetted from both the police chief and deputy. You have a letter here dated May 12th from the chief advising your board. And she has her statements of moral character from John White Jr., Mary Timothy, Jennifer Ruhana, Georgia Bayou, I know Georgia, and Christine Spencer. So with that, I'll kind of hand it back to you guys. Aoife, did I miss anything as far as this? We haven't done a constable in a while.
No, I worked with Liz on this because I was even unsure of exactly what we needed for it. But yeah, no, Kelly took care of all the paperwork that we needed. Per the charter, like you said, we did advertise it for the 30 days prior to this appointment, and we received no other applications.
Okay, thanks for that additional information, Ethan. That's helpful. So, Miss.
Oh.
Yeah,
Are you okay?
Yeah, I was just gonna see if Miss Murphy was actually on. Can you hear us? Doesn't. Maybe
All right.
it's just me.
Okay, I'll make a motion to appoint Kellyanne Murphy to the position of constable for a 3-year term. And I would like to add that she is probably one of the most lovely, sweet, kind people. And I think that she'll be perfect. And also in knowing that she could be serving some papers to people that could be upset and just not maybe having their best day, that Kelly is the kind of person that will be a very kind person. So I think when you want to kind of round out and you talk about making, you know, policing and those sorts of things a bad day into a better day, that I think she's actually probably a really perfect asset to the constables. And that's my motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Miss Murphy, for volunteering to this position.
Kelly, she may have, I think I saw the little yellow
It was
box.
turning yellow, but for some reason it's not coming through.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll move on for now. Under new business, the next piece we have is a vote to authorize the town administrator to carry out the reserve fund and or interdepartmental transfers up to $10,000. Jim, can you give us some background there, please?
Sure. This is the standard vote that comes up each year around this time. Finance Committee voted about a week and a half ago favorable action on this. Just allows us some flexibility here if anything comes out of the blue. Right now, Jody and I talked. We're looking pretty good for all the departments. You may recall that we transferred some money over to the fire department at town meeting. So right now, I don't see the need for it, but something may come up. And if it does, I'll make sure that if I do approve anything, I'll advise the board and let you know what happened and why.
Okay.
So I'd like to make the motion, but before that, I just want to say, Jim, I think I like email you or text you or call you every single year, and I'm like, what do you need $10,000 for? Yeah. And every single year you then give me the same response, and you did the same thing this year, and then I was like, oh my God, how many years am I going to send the same message to him? And but anyway, so with that being said, I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to carry out a reserve fund and or interdepartmental transfer for up to $10,000.
I'll second that.
I just have a quick question.
Please, David. Yeah, go ahead.
So is this just intended to the end of the fiscal year?
Yeah, I believe it's through July 15th, which is it's not good for the next fiscal year. So yes, it's for only this fiscal year.
Okay, could we just amend that motion for up until including July 15?
So amended.
Reseconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes as amended by David, 5-0-0. The next item on our agenda for tonight is a discussion and possible vote on the employment contract policy for the town of Walpole, the possibility of adding a policy to our town of Walpole policies and procedures manual. So there's a lot of parts and pieces to this discussion, and I want to make sure that we touch on every one and get everybody's input here. So, Jim, why don't you kick us off and give us a little background on this?
Sure. Just some background on this one. This item came up back on February 8th at the FinCom meeting, and again on February 18th. I ended up following up. We had an extensive discussion with the Finance Committee. I think it was in mid-March about the history and contracts. And Jim had asked on May 11th, once I brought this up under the TA updates, could you provide us with some more background information? So just real quick, I won't go into every little detail, but this matter was discussed by the Personnel Board in 2015, 16, and 17. At the time, I worked with the Personnel Board Chair, Labor Council, to develop two options, a policy and a drafted bylaw. The Personnel Board voted 2 to 3 to do nothing. They tabled it, and no action was taken since really, or discussed since 2017. Fast forward to 2021, February, was brought up by FinCom member, and they had some questions. Does the select board have some authority? And I had a feeling, I knew where it was coming from. And I in fact, actually spoke to Mr. Moraski yesterday. It was coming from Joe. He had some concerns. he explained to me dating back to 1979 to just about 1983, the town worked with the town administrator at the time to really put some authority with the personnel board, create the personnel bylaws, and he felt as though it should be more specified that a bylaw should be in place. Joe and I had a really good talk yesterday. It was productive. I explained to him that the reason why, I think the board asked me to move forward with the policy was to allow for some flexibility. He's a by-the-book type of guy. He wants it in writing, black and white. He expressed to me that he'd like to see it as a bylaw. So, we agreed to disagree on that one. But I just more or less wanted to let your board know the history, how we got here. I cited it in the memo dated May 20th, and I'll make sure I make available to anyone who asked for it that, such and such Mass General Law allows the select board as the chief executive officer of the town to enter into individual employee contracts with the town and for town employees. And at this time, we currently have 7, as I think all of your board at one point or another has entered into those contracts with, whether it be with myself, with the DPW director, the police and fire chiefs, for the IT director, the finance director, the building commissioner. So what we tried to do is more or less formalize this, and that was what I heard at town meeting when I think Joe and Susan Lawson got up and raised some concerns about it. Like, what triggers an individual employee contract policy? I worked with Kevin Feely to kind of draft this based off of policy in another community in Massachusetts. So I tried to outline everything for your board to consider and talk about tonight. So that's it.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I think that's really valuable background, and also to expand upon that, Kevin Feely is counsel, is legal counsel to the town, right? So he's taking a look at this and helped Jim to draft it, excuse me. And just a little bit of a clarification on how we got to this point tonight. We had this discussion, as Jim mentioned, that the RTM's brought this up at town meeting. It's been something that's been talked about over the last 5 or 6 years, again, as Jim alluded to. And the idea that, well, why don't we put it into writing? Why don't we have a policy then that will speak to this issue and clarify it for everyone? And I personally thought that was a good idea, which is one of the reasons why we're here talking about it tonight. And again, as Jim alluded to, one of the issues that some folks had with that is that, well, it ought to be a bylaw to the town, and it ought to be codified that way, rather than a policy and procedure to the town and the select board. And that's really more a question of procedures and operationally, because a bylaw committee can be formed by the town moderator, and they would get together and create a bylaw conceivably and bring it to town meeting, probably not fall town meeting, probably spring town meeting next year. So we're talking about a long process that takes a lot of detail and a lot of investigation and research to get the language right, and certainly a legal process as well. And it seemed like it would be a good idea to have something in writing in our policies and procedures manual in the interim, or perhaps that committee doesn't get formed for one reason or another, we still have something in writing. So that's really what we're talking about here tonight, is how we should put it in writing, formalize our approach to this. The last thing I'd add before we kind of open it up to the board is that we're not under any sort of time constraint. We brought it forward tonight because it was brought up at town meeting, which was a number of weeks ago. We had the time, and it seems like a reasonable discussion to have. So we're under no constraints to have to vote on something tonight, or even finish this discussion tonight and come to an agreement, or a vote, I should say. So with all that being said, why don't we just go around here to the board for additional comments and questions for Jim, folks who have any. David, if we could start with you, please.
So one of the dangers I see of the current proposed guidance is that there can be the possibility that the town administration is picking and choosing which employees on a particular basis, in a particular set of years, gets listed under a contract and which ones don't. And that there could be, feelings of favoritism or lack of favoritism among other employees who feel that they might or might not be, should have been subject to the contract. That having been said, I don't, I think that there should be a bylaw. I think people should discuss what positions should be under contract, and not by dealing with particular personalities in the positions, but rather the positions themselves, the nature of the person's qualifications and credentials, realizing that, you know, if you want a CPA to be in the finance department or someone with the finance background, that might be somebody that you want as a contracted person, as well as things like the police and fire chief that need certain requirements. Of this list, one certainly strikes me that shouldn't be in the list is the town clerk. I don't think that's a position that we so necessarily need to preserve. But having said that, and I also think that certainly someone can propose a bylaw change without going through the bylaw committee. I believe that process does not necessarily, you know, I think the bylaw committee is, the moderator is more of like a bylaw review committee or a charter review committee where they can take a look at things in a general way and just go through the bylaws and see what needs to be changed. But I certainly think that, you know, possibly for the fall meeting, that a proposed bylaw could be proposed. And, you know, I don't, but I think it is good to at least have some kind of process laid out here, and I think this is a good start.
Okay. Thank you, David. Mark, please.
I would say thanks, Jim, for pulling this together. This policy sort of codifies what we've been doing and what we've been talking about. It gets it down on paper. You know, I do know that the personnel board had some discussions back in 2015 through 2017 and never really moved forward with that. And I do understand, you know, as David just talked about as well, that, you know, a bylaw could be put forward for consideration at town meeting, and, you know, I'm fine if they want to go that route, but I think this is a good start. I think this is something that we should vote on. I'm happy to vote on it today, but I'll sort of look and, you know, go with whatever all of you would like to do. I think it documents what we're doing. It is an important tool in the tool bag of the select board to be able to give contracts to key people, you know, in town government. You know, in the business world, you know, you try to lock in your key people. It gives them a little bit more, the feeling of security. It gives us a little more security knowing that they're, you know, under contract for a couple of years. So I think it's a good thing that we want to be able to do. And I think this policy is a good one, and I'm in favor of it.
Thanks, Mark. Nancy, please.
So I have multiple feelings about it. I do have a question. How has FinCom, the current FinCom board, and how is the current personnel board weighed in on this?
They have not.
Okay, and then, you know, Ben, you mentioned that a bylaw going that route means a lot of detail and research.
It should. It certainly can be done quickly.
Right, and you know what, I think that a lot of mistakes are made when we do things quickly.
Right.
And I think a lot of research and a lot of detail is a good thing. But you know, we have 7 contracts and they've worked out well. I disagree with Dave that it's not I mean, I could see that it could be about favoritism, but it hasn't been. You know, a lot of what we've done has been done because of the market. And for example, Jim, I'm going to pick on you. there's not a lot of town administrators, and they're aging out. And we have done an incredible, all right, we haven't, we've all been the board members, but really Jim has done the incredible job of fulfilling our past master plan and building a lot of buildings and totally strengthening our infrastructure, staying within budgets that were given to him, and so much so that he's been tried to be poached. And we've had him under contract, and he's stayed with us, and he's stayed loyal. And if he wasn't on a contract, he could have been poached very easily, because he would be a very desirable town administrator to other towns because of what he's gotten accomplished in this town. And, but yet then again, it may not work out. We just had awarded just very recently our police chief a 5-year contract, a generous one. And he still has the ability through that contract to move on and choose to move on. And he's made that choice. Chief Bailey had just renewed his regular contract that he's had since he's been here. He grew up here, he's gotten his job, and he was one of our last ones to get a contract. But yet he's got his contract and he is staying with us. And just to remember all the explosions out in the Merrimack Valley, he was like the leader chief out there in running command for it. And we're very lucky to have him. So, that is a good contract to have too. And then now, I'm sorry, I'm picking on all of you, Mike in the building department, when we did his first initial interview when he first worked here in Walpole, and we took him from Brookline and to become the job that he has now. And myself and Chief Bailey were like, wow. And he came to us. He didn't have a contract. Well, guess what? Someone poached him and took him away. So then whatever, happened, times changed. We got him back and we gave him a contract. And we need one because, the municipal side of business is a lot of times that, they're in this public sector and they're not making what they would make in the private sector. And when they are really good at their job, people are going to be looking for them. As we know, Jim does for the positions that he's looking for. He's looking at other towns to take too. So, yes, I've gone in a humongous circle about it. Am I there yet convinced that the policy is better than the bylaw is better than the policy? I don't know. I'm being honest. I would like us to maybe have a discussion with the personnel board and hear their reasons and make a decision together. Get the reasons why we shouldn't, why we should, and just make a good decision is what I would like to do. And obviously I think I'm sounding like we should have some contracts, so I don't know. I want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row.
Thank you, Nancy. And Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm not going to repeat what David, Mark, and Nancy said. I largely agree with the words they've used and am in a similar spot. I did ask a couple weeks ago just to have this conversation in particular because I wanted to make sure that there was some level of involvement in the personnel board. Not that it was looking for approval from the personnel board, because I really do think that's falls into our jurisdiction, at least at this point. But I have spoken with Joe, and I know that it has been a source of concern to him that the personnel board wasn't informed, didn't receive, at least he doesn't believe they received copies of the contracts and all that. So what this does is it's going to codify that. It's going to put a process that we all understand in place. And, if the bylaw comes along, the bylaw comes along, but at least it's something that's in place. And I do believe it's good business discipline to have your leadership in particular under contract for all the reasons you guys have cited. Again, I won't recite it. The one add I would make is that I know that the bond rating agencies do look at the town from a perspective of, continuity of the management team, the leadership. And so having the leadership team under contract is a strong indication to the bond rating agencies that we've got that continuity, and it's helpful in maintaining the bond rating. So I just, I'd add that in. But Jim, I'm good with what you've got laid down on the paper here today. It satisfies my request from a couple weeks ago, and so thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I would just add, and I think Nancy alluded to it, or maybe just said it outright, that putting this policy in place, getting it on paper, does not preclude a bylaw from coming either through a subcommittee named by the moderator or by anybody else, as David rightfully said. So this is more of a starting point for this discussion than anything else. This doesn't necessarily close it. So I think some people are kind of looking at this as an end-all be-all, which it is not. So there are lots of options at our disposal, but I tend to agree that these actions that we take as a board ought to be in writing. And so whether or not a bylaw comes along and a town meeting thinks should change some of these policies and procedures, I think that we ought to at least have it in writing in the meantime. And so I would echo what Mark said and thank Jim for putting this together. I think it's timely, and I think it's reasonable to have it in place. So if somebody would like to make a motion, then we could hear it.
I will make a motion to approve the employment contract policy and to add to the Town of Walpole Policies and Procedure Manual. I would also like to add to that motion that this motion is not sending a message that the Board of Selectmen is overstepping the power of the moderator, and at any time that he would like to look into a bylaw, we would support that.
It's a long motion, but I'll second it.
Thanks.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Being that there is none, proceed with the roll call vote. David?
No.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 4-1-0. And I would just echo, Nancy, what you said. I appreciate that amendment. That's very right. Moving on to the next item of business is a vote request of Andrew Flowers for an entertainment permit for 20 Front Street for live music from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on June 5th, 2021. Any discussion or questions from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve Andrew Flowers' request for a one-day entertainment permit at 20 Front Street for live music from 6 to 9 p.m. on June 5th, 2021.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. The next item under new business, number 4, under new business is an update on the lifting of all COVID-19 emergency measures. So this is an item here where, Jim Johnson can kind of fill us in here on the latest. I know that Jim had issued a memo to the board, and certainly something that continues up until even, I think, a couple hours ago, Jim. We got some updates, so please go ahead.
So yesterday, as you know, I provided the board with a memo over there. I met with Melissa and town nurse Trish Fisher to kind of review everything and figure out how are we going to proceed. So just a brief background on this. On Monday, May 17th, the governor decided to lift all COVID restrictions on May 29th and end the state of emergency on June 15th. Effective May 29th, all industries will be permitted to open, with the exception of remaining face covering requirements for public and private transportation systems, essentially the MBTA, facilities housing vulnerable populations. All industry restrictions will be lifted and capacity will increase to 100% for all industries. Melissa and Trish Fisher and I met to kind of discuss, and we agreed that, we're not going to set a separate set of guidelines or rules here in Walpole. we're going to adhere to the CDC and the Massachusetts DPH guidelines and requirements moving forward. That way it's uniform across the board. I met with Deputy Kelleher this afternoon. He agreed with that because once we start, because we're allowed to set our own rules, but I don't think it's a good idea to have different rules in Walpole and you go over the line to Norwood and it's something totally different. We want to ensure that the town continues to stay aligned with the requirements. I've received a few requests from boards and committees to begin meeting in person. Specifically, the Planning Board and Sewer and Water Commissioner have asked about it. I'm looking for some guidance from your board at this time in regards to meeting in person. Right now, after the 15th, up until this afternoon, it was, the building's open and there's no 6 feet required between people, no 3 feet. You can meet in person and without face coverings. So prior to the issue that came out today, it was that we're going to go back to the way we were on March 11th, 2020, with having to adhere to the provisions of the open meeting law as they were written back then. So no Zoom, no like we're meeting this evening, or we just have to adhere to it. So earlier today, just this afternoon, the governor issued a press release saying that he'll file legislation to extend certain emergency measures in place that are set to expire the 15th. He's going to extend those until September 1, which allows for additional time to consider possible permanent changes to the open meeting law. So it's a little bit of a gray, cloudy area until that bill is signed into law. I spoke to Senator Feeney just this evening. He anticipates that the extension to September 1 is going to pass. But I guess my question from the board is, how do you want to proceed as far as in-person meetings? We can certainly do it. It's, for your board, my first thought is to have you meet in the new finance committee room, where we haven't had a finance committee meeting down there. It allows for us to be even more spread out at that large table. The issue is going to be regarding if we're going to have people come and testify. I'm more concerned about planning and zoning meetings for hearings so people have an equal say. But if this is extended out, we can certainly allow for in-person board meetings or Zoom meetings. It's ultimately going to be your call. But I'd like to be able to advise the Sewer and Water Commissioners, the Planning Board, and whoever else asks, can we start to have them? At this time, it's been no, we're holding off for now. So I'd like some input from you folks. As far as the alcohol issues and with the extending of the outdoor premises, it looks like they're going to, with the recent update from KP Law, 2 items are currently under discussion at the general court. The legislators are proposing to do something. The state of emergency, if nothing's done with the outdoor dining, that's going to expire on August 14th. But from everything I'm getting told, that'll be extended at least into November probably, and won't be much of an issue, at least for this year, for the restaurants that we need to take up. So that's where it's more or less the ABCC alcohol issues and the open meeting law issues I wanted to update your board on.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. No, that was really comprehensive. I think you hit everything. The only thing that I did want to add is that we had sent a letter to our delegation immediately after that order to lift the emergency measures came out, basically saying, well, what are we going to do with all these other items that you just described, the ABCC and the dining outdoors and the open meeting law for Zoom meetings and whatnot. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the governor listened to us and issued this press release today, but that's what we were looking for. So I'm thankful that the governor did that. Whether it was too late or not is something that we can debate another time. So that's where we're at. So this board doesn't meet again until it doesn't have a regular meeting until I believe it's June 15th, right, Jim? And we have June 7th, the Monday after the election. The select board has its reorganization meeting, which is really just a brief hello to choose the new positions within the board, chair and vice chair and whatnot. So I would propose, and we can discuss this right now, but I would propose going back to in-person meetings for the select board on June 15th. It'll be the new board. I think it's a reasonable time to go back. It gives Jim and the other folks a couple of weeks here, three weeks actually, to get a plan together, and Melissa and folks in the health department be able to effectively plan for that. I think obviously the board can get together in a safe environment, but again, as Jim Johnson said, to be able to accommodate all the people that will want to come, and also be able to set up a system whereby we can accommodate those folks that do want to participate via Zoom. It's going to be really important so that folks can stay engaged. So with that being said, let's go around here to the board. David, if we could start with you, please.
Sure. As far as the use of the extension of the ABCC rules that allows the outdoor dining and extension of premises, I do hope that they extend that to November. But I would suggest that those organizations that have outdoor dining now get a letter or something that telling them, all right, you have a year if you want to do this next year. Let's get it. You got to follow the process. It may not. This temporary grant may not be enough for you. File what you need to file with ABCC in case the rules don't get applied. File what you need to file with us to get this going forward. I would also suggest that there also be a plan for, we did give a lot of some space out of town land and space for free. I don't think it can be free anymore after this year, and I would suggest that, provisions be made for that. As far as the board meeting, obviously I'm not going to be at the board meeting. I'm looking forward to, so I would just suggest that maybe you just, depending, I don't know the health of the board meeting, the current candidates for selectmen, but there may be an issue that one or two of them may have that they may need some accommodation. And I would just suggest you hold off that till your organizational meeting and discuss it then.
Thanks, David. Mark?
Yeah, I agree with David's comments on the ABCC. I think outdoor dining is a really good thing for the local restaurants, and I hope that the legislature codifies that and allows something along those lines in future years. As far as us, I think it's a good idea to meet in person on June 15th. Now, having had a lot of experience with Zoom, I'd also like to keep the Zoom option available. We need 3 select board members to have a legal meeting. It would also be nice if somebody's traveling or away to have the Zoom option sort of in our back pocket. I know that we've done that from time to time on a speakerphone. A speakerphone is not a great way to run a meeting, but somebody on Zoom who could participate in our meeting, we could see them, they could see us, I think is really good thing. And I did reach out to Tamara at Walpole Media today, and I know Jim has reached out to her as well to make sure that we and other boards will be able to do that. I think that would be a nice bonus for people who are traveling and would like to participate. As long as we have our 3 to make it a legal meeting, others could attend by Zoom, and if anybody had a health issue, that would work as well. So I would encourage us to make sure that, that's one of our options going forward.
Can I sneak in here for a second?
Sure, David.
To Mr. Gallivan's point, the other side of it is that even if the rules go back to public meeting, the normal public meeting rules, certain participants, presenters and things like that could still do things by Zoom. If, for instance, you didn't want, if it was just a short thing that you needed legal counsel for, they wouldn't have to come to Walpole and sit in the meeting, that perhaps that they could still participate by Zoom. So that would be a good way to do things. I've watched, the Mass School Buildings Authority meetings where they have, 5, different professionals sitting there through the whole meeting, and maybe they're not speaking until the last hour. It certainly would be helpful that they don't have to drive an hour to this meeting to spend 15 minutes speaking. So there may be a way to do that with still having the people who are deliberating in the same room, but allow some people to participate remotely who are not people voting or deliberating.
Thanks, David. Nancy.
as outdoor dining, hopefully we'll be able to do whatever we can, and the legislator will make that happen, that we help them to stay profitable coming out of all of this. I think that's probably, the biggest advantage is making sure our businesses stay healthy. As far as meetings go, I think that science is there. I think that, they're saying we're like 70% vaccinated in Massachusetts. If you want the vaccination, you could have gotten it. If you didn't want it, you haven't gotten it. And it's up to you. If you want to wear a mask, if you don't want to wear a mask, you sanitize in, you sanitize out. That I think that there's really no reason for us to have our meetings, in all of our meetings, but I think something that we've learned from this is that technology is wonderful, and in a way we can actually use it to expand, that there's elderly people that maybe can't get out at night because they can't drive and they can't come to a meeting, that there's probably no reason that we shouldn't have that Zoom available, that it just opens the open meeting laws to a bigger forum, that just because you physically couldn't drive to our meeting doesn't mean that you can't join it on a TV at some point and be included in our meeting. And that's wonderful. So as far as science goes, I think that we're there as far as safety goes. And if they're going to fill the Garden next week to watch a Bruins playoff game, then I think that we're going to be okay in all of our meetings. And if you choose not to sanitize in, sanitize out, and you choose not to wear a mask if you didn't get a vaccine, then we all have the freedom of choice. And I'm saying this, and I've seen what I've seen, and a lot of you haven't seen what I've seen. But I will also miss getting to wear like pajamas at home when you're So, there's ups and downs, but I do think that we can have our reorg meeting. And I think that as long as we stick with science, that moving forward, we can figure this out. And one thing that we can take from all of this is that there's a way to get the people that couldn't be at our meetings at our meeting and continue that. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Nancy. Jim O'Neill?
Yeah, it's my hope that we're going to carry over a lot of the things that we did differently as a result of COVID into the business as usual, if you will, including the things that the board has already talked about, so I won't repeat those, but think about some of the stuff that we've done here at Town Hall to make the Town Hall more accessible. I'd like to think that we take full advantage of all the learnings that we've had through this process and bring those things forward, of course, where it makes sense, and maybe some cases where it doesn't make sense. And really try to conduct business in a much more 21st century fashion. So hopefully that's the way the thing will shake out at the state level. With respect to meeting in person, I think the select board really should start meeting in person again. It's one of the things that's really been, I think, problematic. It's nothing we can do about it, but the fact that we haven't been able to be in person and have face-to-face public input and things of that nature. That's a big loss in the process in my mind. I do think there's a place for Zoom, which is all part of the pull forward the stuff that we learned, which I already mentioned. But yeah, I think that the board needs to start meeting again, and June 15th sounds like a reasonable time to do that, all things considered. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Jim. Just one thing that I'd add quickly, and Nancy made a good point about accessibility, but I've heard from some folks, namely younger board and committee participants who have young kids and have maybe kids who are playing sports and whatnot. And I know it's been more than once, and I know that Nancy can empathize with this as well, where you roll in from a football game or a soccer game, or roll out to a soccer game or a baseball game, and the ability to be with your family and spend time with your kids and have dinner or whatever and be home and still be timely and on the Zoom and in person, basically really helpful to get engagement from a younger demographic in town. So I think that's important to take into account as well as we're looking at policies and procedures for the future. So thank you. And thanks, Jim Johnson, for staying on top of this. I know, as I said at the opening, it changes on an hourly basis, it seems like sometimes. So really appreciate the efforts there.
So Ben, just to follow up, so
Yes.
You know, I know historically the select board has just had the Monday night after the election as a reorg meeting, but maybe if you're okay, I'll add something on there, just future meeting discussion regarding the 15th, just to cover it, and we'll set it and go from there.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
Okay.
So my question, are we not gonna meet in person to reorg? Cause I mean, that especially is just 7 people normally.
Yeah, let's just do that via Zoom. I mean, that's a week and a half away. I just want to make sure that the health department and everybody can get their
We met in person.
policies and procedures. I know we serve on the baseball field. I just want to keep it as formal as possible. So let's just do it. Let's just do it that way as Jim described, and we can have that item on there. Whoever's on the board at that time, we can confirm, kind of as David said, confirm that everybody's comfortable doing that. Considering that there'll be, a new member at least, and
Is someone gonna make that motion?
I don't think we have to vote. I don't think we have to vote on that, do we? Is there a vote necessary? Jim, do you know?
No, I'm fine if you just want to. We'll just Aoife and I will just have that on the agenda, to the reorg, and then future meeting location discussion or whatever.
Oh, all right. I'm just saying that I'm not in favor of meeting via Zoom for our reorg meeting,
Oh,
is what I'm saying, so.
Okay.
I think it's after the 29th, and we met in person before town meeting. So I'm.
Okay. Okay. We can continue to discuss that as well. We can talk about it as it gets closer as well.
How do we talk about it if we don't have a meeting?
Well, we can always change where we meet, Nancy, and then post it appropriately, right? It's all just changing so quickly and by the hour, and the governor's putting out new proclamations, and we know that they're not going to be able to vote on this until at the earliest, the end of next week, probably after that. So
we had.
I just don't see the rush for a meeting that's going to last 10 minutes.
I think it sends a message, and we met in person before town meeting. It's fine. It's fine. I just want it noted that I think we're avoiding it.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey Ben, I would jump in. I'm comfortable with the meeting on June 7th to be a Zoom meeting, and just because I'm not sure exactly where people are going to be after the long weekend. Sorry, I'm mixing up my weeks. But meeting on the 15th in person, I think is a great idea and a great way to go.
All right, well, thank you for all the input, everybody. Moving on to the next item under new business is item number 5, the master plan steering committee update. We had such a detailed discussion about this in our last meeting that I just wanted to put this on as a follow-up so everyone knows, kind of how that shook out. So, this board voted to send a memo and some recommendations to the planning board for their consideration as part of this master planning process. We have the consultant on board and everything's ready to get started here. We just need to name the master plan steering committee. I had asked Mark Gallivan if he would just update us briefly on that here tonight, given that you attended the planning board meeting and gave the planning board some feedback and engaged in the discussion there. So I just wanted to have that in public session and make everyone aware of where we're at with this. It is such an important item that's before us. So Mark Gallivan, if you could just give us a brief update of what occurred at that meeting and kind of where you see it headed based on what happened.
Sure. So the planning board had received our recommendation, and just for people who didn't watch our last meeting, we recommended 13 people to be on a steering committee for the master plan. The planning board did have some discussion, and in 2004, when they put the master plan steering committee together, there were 28 people listed as on the committee, plus many of the planning board members who weren't officially on the committee were involved at various points. So they had some discussion about, is 13 the right number, or should it be bigger? The chair, Jack Conroy, suggested to the members that they think about, do they like the 13? Would they like to add more people? And at their meeting in June, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what date they picked, but at their June meeting, they're going to have a follow-up discussion. And I think the intent was that they would vote on the makeup of the board. Personally, I can't speak for our board, but for myself, I like the committee of 13. I'm also happy if they want to expand that. Nancy talked about at our last meeting about it was a big committee. There were lots of people. They talked to a lot of different types of people, different groups of people. And, I think that master plan was very successful and would love to see them set it up for success, however they want that to be. And, it was clear that they are in charge of the master plan steering committee. I recognize that, we recognize that, and they do too. So I encourage them, if there's anything we can do to help, we'd love to help them as they move that forward. So I do plan to attend their next meeting in June, either in person or on Zoom, and continue to watch how that evolves. So hopefully that'll get voted in the June meeting.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Any other questions for Mark or from the board on that topic?
I just want to thank Mark for going. Thanks a lot.
It's easy on Zoom. A little harder when you have to go to the meeting room. But...
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, that concludes new business, and we move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations: Georgina Brown to Council on Aging, Barbara Kelly to Council on Aging, Charles and Penelope Cassesi for Nancy Hurd to Council on Aging, Lauren and Joseph Sylvia for Nancy Hurd to Council on Aging gifts.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th, 2021 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. There is no further discussion from the board. We'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0.
I'd like to just jump in for a second. I wanted to say quick congratulations to my son and all his classmates, the Walpole High graduating class of 2021. Last year was horrific. This year was horrific. But one thing to show is that you guys are all, and girls, so much better than all of us. You have adjusted, you have performed, you have excelled. And I am so proud of all of you. We are so proud of all of you as a town. And to be so good through all of this, you guys are all going to go far. You're all going to be great. And it's just beautiful to see. And in such a time of so much sadness, that you guys are just great people, and you're going to be great adults, and you're going to be fantastic leaders. So good luck, congratulations, and thank you, all of you.
It's well said.
Thank you. And we move, don't worry, Jim, we didn't forget about you. Town Administrator's update. Mr. Jim Johnson.
Just a couple of items here. I'm pleased to report that at this time we only have 19 active cases for COVID here in Walpole. That's the lowest in a really, really long time. So we have had 2,105 cases in Walpole. 2,086 have closed out. So I can't say enough about Trish and Melissa and Rika and Jen down on the Board of Health, and the Board of Health themselves. They've done a great job, and it's nice to see the case numbers so low. I was happy to see that today when we got that. Just a quick reminder of the June election. set to be held Saturday, June 5th. Town clerk's advised me that she and her team are all set and ready to go. She has everyone's lined up to be working, and we're ready to go. Memorial Day observance, veteran agent Mark Bryson's been working hard on getting all the ceremony together. It's going to be held at noon on the Common on Monday, obviously. It's going to be our first real big in-person meeting in a long time, gathering. So that's going to be nice to see everyone come together for that one. And just a quick update on the Route 1A road work. The road work continues as it has for the last few weeks. Construction has been slow, but we expect it to start to be ramped up. The warning signs are just about completed. Vegetation removal will continue along the road. Eversource continues to transfer the lines, and they're on track to be completed in June. The June 1st excavation is expected to start on Hoover Road later on that week in the North Street vicinity. And North Street, the underground utility work is getting ready for installation. They're going to have to construct a small temporary bridge over the Neponset River to deal with that. So we're really, hopefully, fingers crossed, start to see some activity on June 1st. I have a lot of people asking me, it seems like every time I bring my car in, Alberto at the mobile asks, what's going to happen? Or the Dunkin' Donuts brothers ask me what's going on with it. So we try to keep them updated and update the section on the website as much as possible to get the word out there. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, well, there's been a lot of traffic out there and a lot of work being done already over the past couple of weeks, so I'm sure people have noticed it. Any questions or comments for Jim on the items under Administrator's Update? Being that there is none, the board will now move to executive session. It is the board's intention to go into executive session for purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. To negotiate with non-union personnel, Deputy Chief Richard Kelleher, and return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session. So we will be back to have our vote in public session. So I will make a motion that the board will enter into executive session for the purpose stated, with the board returning to open session, as I said, at the conclusion of the executive session. Mark is seconding, but I think Mark is on mute.
Thanks, Ben. I'll second that.
All right. I could read your lips, but I don't know if that flies. In any event, we'll proceed with the roll call vote on moving into executive session. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0. Board will now move into executive session. to open session after the conclusion of the executive session. So I would hear a motion.
Move to approve the contract for Richard Kelleher as the interim police chief.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Abstain.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 4-0-1. Does any board member have any additional business before the board this evening? Since we do not.
I'd just like to say thanks to David for all the time he's put in over the years as a select board member. Even though I didn't always agree with David and he didn't always agree with me, I do respect the work that he put in and appreciate it. Thanks, David. Good luck.
I would echo that. Well said, Mark.
Thanks. I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.